Two Black Hawk helicopters scream overhead, low enough to rattle windows, their rotors shredding the afternoon calm into chaos. Soldiers pour out before the wheels even touch pavement, boots hammering concrete, rifles raised, not at an enemy, but scanning frantically through a residential street like they've lost something irreplaceable. Dr. Ethan Vale stands motionless on the curb, still clutching the cardboard box they handed him 20 minutes ago. His hospital badge sits on top, cracked plastic over his name, worthless now. His daughter's small hand grips his jacket. Then a lieutenant sprints toward him, shouting a name that doesn't make sense anymore. "Commander Vale, we need you now!" The man who was just fired for being difficult, for refusing unsafe equipment, for asking too many questions, he's the one they've been hunting for. The ground trembles beneath his feet, and everything he thought was over is about to begin. If you want to see how far a man can fall before the world realizes who he really is, stay with me until the end. Like this video, drop a comment with the city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story can travel. The security guard didn't even look up when Ethan Vale walked out of Hartwell General Hospital for the last time. Just another face leaving through the side exit, another body the system had chewed up and spit back onto the street. The cardboard box in his arms wasn't heavy, just a coffee mug, a stethoscope with frayed tubing, a faded family photo he kept taped inside his locker. They hadn't given him time to pack properly. They never did. His daughter waited by the curb, backpack slung over one shoulder, eyes wide and worried in that way only 8-year-olds can manage when they know something's wrong but don't have the words yet. She'd been sitting in the staff lounge for the past hour, coloring on the back of outdated consent forms while her father got officially erased. "Dad?" Her voice was small. "We're going home, sweetheart." He tried to make it sound normal, like this was the plan all along. She didn't ask why he had a box. She didn't ask why his hospital badge was sitting on top, snapped clean in half. Kids were smarter than people gave them credit for. She just took his free hand and walked. Behind them, Hartwell General rose like a monument to everything wrong with the system. 12 stories of glass and steel, budget cuts dressed up in modern architecture. Inside, the emergency department was still running skeleton crews on equipment that should have been retired 5 years ago. Ethan had spent the last 18 months trying to get someone to listen, trying to get someone to care. This morning, he'd refused to use a ventilator that had failed calibration twice. Told the charge nurse it was a lawsuit waiting to happen. Told the attending it was a patient's life on the line. Told the hospital administrator, a woman named Dr. Claudia Marsh, who wore power suits like armor and treated doctors like replaceable parts, that he wouldn't sign off on something unsafe just because it saved the hospital money. She'd called him into her office at 10:47 a.m. He remembered the time because the clock on her wall was the expensive kind, the kind that didn't tick, just moved in perfect silence while your career got dismantled. "Dr. Vale, your attitude has become a liability. Not your concerns, not your advocacy, your attitude. We've received multiple complaints about your refusal to follow protocol. Protocol written by people who hadn't touched a patient in a decade. Effective immediately, your employment with Hartwell General is terminated." She'd slid the termination letter across her desk like she was serving divorce papers. Clean, efficient, practiced. Ethan hadn't argued. What was the point? He'd seen this dance before. Watched good doctors get pushed out for asking the wrong questions, for slowing down the assembly line, for treating medicine like it was still about saving lives instead of optimizing throughput. He'd signed the paper, taken his box, left through the side door like a man who'd lost a fight he didn't know he was in. Now he stood on the sidewalk with his daughter's hand in his, staring at nothing, trying to figure out what came next. The sun was too bright. The street was too quiet. Everything felt like it was happening to someone else. That's when the sound started. Low at first, a rumble that could have been thunder, except the sky was clear, then louder, closer. The kind of sound that made your chest vibrate, that pulled your eyes skyward, whether you wanted to look or not. 2 helicopters tore through the air, low and fast, military-grade machinery cutting through civilian airspace like the rules didn't apply. Black Hawks. Ethan recognized them instantly. The shape burned into his memory from another life, another version of himself he'd buried years ago. They banked hard, rotors screaming, and dropped toward the street with the kind of precision that only came from serious training and serious urgency. His daughter squeezed his hand tighter. Dad, what's happening? He didn't answer. Couldn't. His brain was trying to process what his eyes were seeing. Two military aircraft landing in a residential neighborhood in the middle of the day, with no warning, no sirens, no context. The first helicopter touched down in the intersection, rotors still spinning, wind whipping trash and leaves into a frenzied circle. The second hovered above, watchful, covering. Soldiers poured out. 6, maybe 8, full combat gear, moving with the kind of coordinated urgency that meant someone's life was on a timer. They fanned out, rifles raised not in threat but in search, scanning faces, scanning the street, looking for something, looking for someone. A lieutenant broke from the group, sprinting toward the hospital entrance, then stopping, turning, scanning again. His eyes locked onto Ethan, and then he was running, straight at him. Ethan's first instinct was to pull his daughter behind him, to shield her, to figure out what the hell was happening and why a soldier was closing the distance between them like Ethan was the objective. But the man wasn't drawing a weapon. He was shouting, "Commander Vale, sir, we need you." The world tilted. Commander. That name, that rank, that life. Ethan hadn't been called that in 6 years. Not since he'd left the service. Not since he'd traded combat zones for emergency rooms. Traded saving soldiers for saving civilians. Traded the weight of command for the invisibility of being just another overworked ER doc in a system that didn't care. The lieutenant stopped 3 feet away, breathless, eyes desperate. "Sir, we've been searching for you. We have a critical patient, cardiac trauma, mid-flight, and you're the only surgeon in range who can handle this." Ethan's mouth moved, but no sound came out. His brain was still catching up. The box slipped from his hands, hit the pavement, spilled his pathetic collection of career remnants onto the concrete. I'm not," he gestured vaguely at the hospital behind him. "I just got fired. I'm not even—" "We know, sir. We've been tracking you since you left the building. We don't have time to explain. We have a patient going into arrest, and if we don't get you in the air in the next 90 seconds, he's dead." Another soldier appeared, a medic, radio crackling at his shoulder. "Lieutenant, patient's vitals are dropping. We need to move." The lieutenant's eyes never left Ethan's face. "Sir, please, you're the only one." 6 years ago, Ethan had been a trauma surgeon attached to a forward operating base in a desert that tried to kill you in 100 different ways. He'd operated in tents, in bunkers, in the back of moving vehicles while mortars shook the ground and bullets pinged off metal. He'd saved lives that shouldn't have been saved, stitched people back together with hands that didn't shake even when everything around him was falling apart. He'd been good, better than good, the kind of surgeon other surgeons called when they didn't know what else to do. But that was before he came home, before he traded the adrenaline for routine, before he convinced himself that being invisible was safer than being needed. His daughter tugged his sleeve. "Dad?" He looked down at her. 8 years old, scared, confused, holding on to him like he was the only solid thing in a world that had just stopped making sense. He looked back at the lieutenant, at the helicopters, at the soldiers waiting for an answer, and somewhere deep inside, in a place he thought he'd locked away, something old and familiar woke up. "Take her." He turned to the nearest soldier, a sergeant with kind eyes. "Keep her safe. Get her to my sister. Her name's Rachel. She lives on Maple, 2 blocks west. Call her. Tell her I'll explain later." "Dad, no. Listen to me." He knelt down, hands on her shoulders, trying to keep his voice steady. "I have to go help someone. I'll be back. I promise." She started to cry. He hated himself for it, but the lieutenant was already pulling him toward the helicopter, and there wasn't time for goodbyes that made sense. There was just movement, just action, just the old reflexes kicking in as Ethan climbed into the Black Hawk and the world dropped away beneath him. The noise inside was deafening. Rotors hammered overhead, the turbine screaming at a pitch that rattled teeth. The medic was shouting updates, something about a punctured ventricle and blood pressure in freefall. Ethan's eyes found the patient, a young man, maybe mid-20s, strapped to a gurney, skin pale as paper, chest rising and falling in shallow, desperate gasps. An IV line ran into his arm, fluids draining into him too slow to matter. Blood soaked through the bandages wrapped around his torso, spreading dark and wet across the fabric. "What happened?" Ethan's voice cut through the rotor noise, sharp and clear. Training accident, the medic shouted back. Live fire exercise, shrapnel to the chest. We stabilized him on site, but he's deteriorating fast. We were en route to Dover Air Force Base when his pressure dropped. We diverted to find you. Why me? The medic's face was grim. Because you're the only trauma surgeon within 100 miles who's done this before. And because the patient is Senator Calloway's son. Ethan's hands went still. Senator Marcus Calloway, chairman of the Armed Services Committee, one of the most powerful men in the country. And this kid bleeding out in front of him was his son. No pressure. He pushed the politics out of his head. It didn't matter who the patient was. It only mattered what was happening inside his chest. Get me a kit. I need to see the wound. The medic moved fast, pulling open a tactical medical case, instruments rattling as the helicopter banked hard. Ethan stripped off his jacket, rolled up his sleeves, and leaned over the patient. The kid's eyes fluttered open, unfocused, drowning in pain and shock. Stay with me, Ethan said. Calm. Steady. The voice he used when everything was going to hell and someone needed to believe it wasn't. I'm going to fix this. He peeled back the bandages. Blood welled up immediately, dark and fast. The shrapnel had gone deep, torn through muscle and nicked the pericardium. If it had gone half an inch further, the kid would already be dead. As it was, he was minutes away from cardiac tamponade, blood filling the sac around his heart, choking it, stopping it. I need to drain the pericardium, now. The medic's eyes widened. Sir, we're in the air. I know where we are. Get me a needle, 18 gauge, long enough to reach the sac. If you miss, I won't. It wasn't arrogance. It was fact. Ethan had done this before. Too many times, in worse conditions. The helicopter hit turbulence, the whole frame shuddering, equipment rattled. The medic grabbed the overhead strap to keep from falling. Ethan didn't move. His hands were already in position, fingers finding the anatomical landmarks by touch, by memory, by instinct that didn't care about the laws of physics or the fact that they were 4,000 feet in the air. He slid the needle in, slow and controlled, angling it just right, feeling for the resistance that meant he'd reach the pericardium. One wrong move and he'd puncture the heart itself. Game over. The needle broke through. Dark blood surged into the syringe. Pressure released. The patient gasped, a raw, desperate sound, and his vitals jumped. Heart rate climbing, blood pressure stabilizing, color flooding back into his face. Ethan pulled the needle out, hands rock steady, and handed it off. He's not out of the woods. I need to see if there's active bleeding in the ventricle. If there is, I'll have to open him up. The medic stared at him like he'd just performed a miracle. Ethan didn't feel like a miracle worker. He felt like a man doing the only thing he knew how to do. He worked fast, fingers moving through protocols burned into muscle memory. The helicopter was still shaking, still climbing, the world outside a blur of sky and clouds. He checked the wound again, probing carefully for arterial damage, for signs of ongoing hemorrhage. The shrapnel had torn through tissue, but missed the major vessels. Lucky, impossibly lucky. But luck only went so far when you were bleeding out at altitude. I need sutures, and get his pressure stabilized. Push fluids, get another line in if you have to. The medic was already moving, hands flying through the kit, pulling out supplies, barking orders into his radio. Another medic appeared from the cockpit, younger, eyes wide with something between awe and terror. Together they worked, a 3-person surgical team in a flying metal box, doing what shouldn't be possible. Ethan sutured the torn tissue, working layer by layer, making sure nothing would rupture the moment they hit real turbulence. His hands didn't shake. They never did. That was the thing about trauma surgery. You either had the nerve or you didn't, and if you didn't, people died. Simple as that. The patient's vitals held, heart rate steady, blood pressure climbing, breathing less ragged. How much longer to Dover? Ethan asked. 8 minutes? The pilot's voice crackled through the headset. 8 minutes. The kid could make it. Probably. If nothing else went wrong. Ethan packed the wound, applied fresh bandages, checked the IV flow. Everything he could do in the air, he'd done. The rest would have to wait for an actual operating room with actual equipment and actual support staff. He sat back, letting out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. The adrenaline was starting to ebb, replaced by the familiar hollow exhaustion that came after high-stakes surgery. His hands were covered in blood. His shirt was soaked. He felt like he'd just run a marathon in his sleep. The medic was staring at him. "Sir, I've been doing this for 12 years. I've never seen anyone work like that." Ethan didn't respond. What was there to say? That he'd spent 3 tours doing exactly this, over and over, until it became as natural as breathing? That he'd walked away from it because he thought he could make more of a difference in a civilian ER? That he'd been wrong? The lieutenant appeared from the cockpit, crouching beside Ethan, his face serious. "Sir, we need to talk about what happens when we land. I get off the helicopter and go home." "It's not that simple." "It never is." The lieutenant hesitated. "Senator Calloway is already at Dover. He knows you're the one who saved his son. He wants to meet you." Ethan closed his eyes. Of course he did. "I don't need a medal. I just need to get back to my daughter." "I understand. But sir, you need to know the hospital you worked for, Hartwell General, they've been flagged." Ethan's eyes snapped open. Flagged for what? Safety violations, equipment failures, multiple complaints from staff that were buried or ignored. The military's been investigating them for months. We've had 3 service members transferred there in the past year, and all 3 reported substandard care. When we found out you'd been fired this morning, it raised red flags. "So you were already looking for me?" "We were already watching the hospital. When the senator's son went critical and we needed a trauma surgeon immediately, your name came up. Former military, combat experience, currently in the area. Then we found out you'd just been terminated. The timing was convenient, suspicious." The helicopter began its descent, the engine pitch changing, the ground rising up to meet them. Ethan could see the base now, runways stretching out like scars across the landscape, buildings clustered in neat military rows. An ambulance was already waiting on the tarmac, lights flashing. "What happens to Marsh?" Ethan asked. "That's above my pay grade, but if I had to guess, she's going to have a very bad week." The skids touched down. The side door slid open. A surgical team rushed forward, taking over, transferring the patient to a proper gurney, shouting vitals and stats. Ethan climbed out, legs unsteady, the ground feeling strange and solid after 20 minutes in the air. Someone handed him a towel. He wiped the blood off his hands and stared at the red streaks soaking into white cloth. A voice cut through the noise, sharp, female, furious. "What the hell is he doing here?" Ethan looked up. Dr. Claudia Marsh stood 20 feet away, still in her power suit, still radiating authority, still looking at him like he was a problem that refused to stay solved. She must have followed the helicopters, must have heard the commotion, must have realized that the man she'd fired 2 hours ago was suddenly the center of a military emergency. The lieutenant stepped between them. "Ma'am, Dr. Vale just saved a life mid-flight. With all due respect, I don't think you understand." "I understand perfectly." Marsh's voice could have cut steel. "I understand that this man was terminated for insubordination and refusal to follow hospital protocol. I understand that he has no business being involved in any medical emergency under any jurisdiction." Ethan was too tired to argue, too tired to care. But the lieutenant wasn't. "Ma'am, the patient he just saved is Senator Calloway's son. And Dr. Vale didn't just save his life, he did it under conditions that would have killed most surgeons. So unless you want to explain to the senator why you fired the only doctor capable of keeping his son alive, I suggest you step back." Marsh's face went white. Before she could respond, another voice joined the conversation, deeper, commanding, the kind of voice that ended arguments just by existing. "Is this the man?" Senator Marcus Calloway walked across the tarmac like he owned it. 6 feet tall, silver hair, expensive suit that somehow didn't look out of place on a military base. Behind him, 2 aides struggled to keep up, phones in hand, already fielding calls. The lieutenant snapped to attention. "Yes, sir. Dr. Ethan Vale." Calloway's eyes swept over Ethan, taking in the blood-soaked shirt, the exhaustion, the way he was still holding the towel like he didn't know what to do with it. Then the senator did something unexpected. He extended his hand. "Dr. Vale, my son is alive because of you. I don't have words for that." Ethan shook his hand, feeling the weight of it, the sincerity buried under layers of political armor. "I did my job, Senator, that's all." "Your job?" Calloway's smile was thin. "According to my staff, you don't have a job. You were terminated this morning." That's correct. Calloway's eyes shifted to Marsh. By you, I assume? Marsh straightened, trying to salvage control. Senator, Dr. Vale was let go due to repeated violations of hospital policy and… Save it. Calloway's voice dropped 10 degrees. I've already had my people pull your employment records. Dr. Vale filed 18 safety complaints in the past year. 18. All of them ignored. All of them buried. And this morning, when he refused to use faulty equipment that could have killed a patient, you fired him for it. That's not… I'm not finished. Calloway stepped closer to Marsh, his presence filling the space between them. My son nearly died today because of a training accident, but if he'd been taken to your hospital instead of a military facility, he'd be dead right now. You know why? Because the surgeon capable of saving him was sitting on a curb with a cardboard box, fired for caring too much. Marsh's mouth opened, closed. No sound came out. Calloway turned back to Ethan. I'm launching a formal investigation into Hartwell General. Safety protocols, equipment maintenance, administrative oversight, all of it. And I'm going to make sure every complaint you filed gets the attention it deserves. Senator, I appreciate that, but I just want to go home. I understand, but first, I need to ask you something. Calloway's expression softened, just slightly. When you were in that helicopter working on my son, did you know who he was? Yes. Did it matter? No. Calloway nodded, like that was the answer he'd been hoping for. That's what I thought. You're a good man, Dr. Vale. Better than this system deserves. He turned to the lieutenant. Get him home and make sure someone checks in on his daughter. The lieutenant nodded. Already done, sir. His sister picked her up 20 minutes ago. Ethan felt something unknot in his chest. His daughter was safe. That was all that mattered. Calloway started to walk away, then paused. Dr. Vale, one more thing. You're going to get a call in the next few days. A job offer. I strongly suggest you take it. What kind of offer? The kind that doesn't involve faulty equipment or administrators who don't listen. And then he was gone, striding toward the building where his son was being prepped for surgery, aides scrambling in his wake. Marsh stood frozen, her face a mask of barely controlled rage and dawning horror. The kind of expression people wore when they realized their entire world was about to collapse. Ethan walked past her without a word. The lieutenant led him to a waiting vehicle, a standard military sedan with a driver already behind the wheel. Ethan climbed into the back seat, his body finally registering the toll of the last hour, muscles aching, head pounding, exhaustion crashing over him like a wave. We'll have you home in 15 minutes, the lieutenant said. Ethan nodded, leaning his head back against the seat, closing his eyes. The world outside the window blurred into motion, buildings, trees, roads. Normal civilian life continuing like nothing had happened, like the last hour had been a fever dream. But it wasn't a dream, it was real, all of it. He'd been fired for doing the right thing. And then, in the span of 20 minutes, he'd been pulled back into the life he thought he'd left behind. He'd saved a senator's son. He'd exposed a corrupt hospital administrator. He'd proven that the skills he'd buried were still there, still sharp, still necessary. And somewhere in the machinery of power and politics and military necessity, the gears were starting to turn. His phone buzzed. A text from his sister. She's okay. Scared, but okay. Where are you? He typed back. On my way. Tell her I'm fine. Tell her I'll explain everything. The car pulled onto his street, familiar houses sliding past, the ordinary neighborhood where he'd tried to build an ordinary life. The driver stopped in front of his sister's house. Ethan could see his daughter through the window, sitting on the couch, still wearing her backpack. He climbed out of the car, legs stiff, body screaming for rest. The front door opened before he reached it. His sister stood there, arms crossed, eyes full of questions. What the hell happened? Long story. You look like you've been in a war. Something like that. His daughter appeared behind his sister, eyes red from crying. When she saw him, she ran. He caught her, lifting her up, holding her tight, feeling her shake against him. I'm sorry, he whispered. I'm so sorry. You promised you'd come back. I did, and I always will. She pulled back, looking at him seriously. Why were there soldiers? Why did they take you? Because someone needed help, and I was the only one who could give it. Are you in trouble? No, sweetheart. I'm not in trouble. Not yet, anyway. He carried her inside, his sister closing the door behind them, the normal world wrapping around him like a blanket. But even as he sat down, even as his daughter curled up beside him, and his sister made tea and the afternoon light faded into evening, he could feel it. The pull, the inevitability. His phone buzzed again. An unknown number. He almost ignored it, but something made him look. Dr. Vale, this is Colonel Hayes, U.S. Army Medical Command. We need to speak with you at your earliest convenience regarding a position with the Military Medical Corps. Please call this number when you're available. Ethan stared at the message. The offer Calloway had mentioned. Already here, already real. His sister was watching him. What is it? Nothing. Just work stuff. You don't have work anymore. Yeah. He set the phone down. That's what I thought too. But even as he said it, he knew the truth. The life he'd tried to leave behind wasn't done with him, not by a long shot. He'd saved one life today, exposed one corrupt administrator, made one enemy who wouldn't forget. And somewhere, in offices he'd never seen, conversations were happening. Decisions were being made, wheels were turning. The man they threw away was about to discover he'd never really left at all. His daughter had fallen asleep against his shoulder, her breathing soft and steady. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Inside, the house was quiet, peaceful, normal. But Ethan knew better. The storm was just beginning. The call came at 6 in the morning, 3 days later. Ethan was already awake, sitting at the kitchen table with cold coffee and a stack of bills he couldn't pay. His severance from Hartwell General was a joke, 2 weeks' salary and a polite suggestion that he sign a non-disclosure agreement. He hadn't signed, didn't plan to. His phone vibrated against the wood, the number flashing across the screen the same one from the text message. Colonel Hayes, U.S. Army Medical Command. He let it ring twice before answering. This is Vale. Dr. Vale, Colonel Amanda Hayes, thank you for taking my call. Her voice was crisp, professional, the kind of tone that expected cooperation and usually got it. I'm calling to discuss an opportunity with the Army Medical Corps. We'd like to bring you on as a senior trauma consultant, effective immediately. I appreciate the offer, Colonel, but I'm not looking to rejoin the military. I understand your hesitation, but this isn't a standard enlistment. We're offering a civilian contractor position with full autonomy, competitive salary, and the resources to do the work you've spent the last 6 years trying to do in a broken system. Ethan took a sip of cold coffee, buying time. What's the catch? No catch. We need surgeons who can operate under extreme conditions. You've proven you can. The senator's son is out of surgery, stable, and expected to make a full recovery. The surgical team at Dover reviewed your field work. They said it was flawless. I did what needed to be done. Exactly. And we need people who do what needs to be done, not what's convenient. Hayes paused. Dr. Vale, I'm going to be direct. The military is expanding its trauma response capabilities. We're building rapid deployment surgical teams for domestic and international crises. We want you to lead one. Ethan set the coffee down. Lead? You'd have a team of 6, surgeons, medics, support staff, full discretion on equipment and protocols. When there's an emergency that civilian hospitals can't handle, you go in and handle it. It sounded too good to be true, which meant it probably was. Why me? Because 3 days ago, you performed a pericardiocentesis in a moving helicopter and saved a life that 99% of surgeons would have lost. Because you've been filing safety complaints for 18 months that everyone ignored, which tells me you actually give a damn. And because Senator Calloway personally requested you. There it was. The catch. I don't owe the senator anything. He doesn't think you do. But he's made it very clear that if we're building these teams, he wants people with integrity leading them, people who won't cut corners, people who will do the right thing even when it costs them. Ethan stared out the window at the morning light creeping across his backyard. His daughter was still asleep upstairs. His sister had gone home last night after making him promise he'd actually eat something. The house was quiet, too quiet. I need time to think about it. You have 24 hours. After that, the offer goes to someone else. Hayes softened, just slightly. Dr. Vale, I've read your service record. I know what you did overseas. I know why you left. And I know you've spent the last 6 years trying to save lives in a system that doesn't value them. This is your chance to do it right." She hung up before he could respond. Ethan sat there, phone in hand, staring at nothing. 24 hours, one decision that would change everything. His daughter appeared in the doorway, rubbing sleep from her eyes, dragging her stuffed rabbit by one ear. "Morning, Bug. Are you sad?" Kids, they saw everything. "No, sweetheart, just thinking. About the soldiers? About work." She climbed into his lap, still warm from sleep. "Are you going to be a soldier again?" "I don't know yet." "I think you should." He looked down at her, surprised. "Why?" "Because you were happy. When you came back from the helicopter, you were scared and tired, but you were happy." Out of the mouths of children, he held her close, breathing in the smell of her shampoo, feeling the weight of her trust. She was right. He had been happy. Not because of the adrenaline or the praise or the vindication, but because for the first time in 6 years, he'd done exactly what he was built to do, and it had mattered. The rest of the morning passed in a blur of routine: breakfast, cartoons, getting his daughter ready for school. His sister showed up at 8 to take her, giving Ethan a look that said they'd be talking later. He waved them off from the porch, watching the car disappear down the street, and then the silence came back. His phone buzzed again. Not Hayes this time. A local number. "Dr. Vale, this is Michael Torres, investigator with the State Medical Board. I'm calling regarding the complaint filed against Hartwell General Hospital. We'd like to schedule an interview with you as soon as possible." Ethan's pulse kicked up. "What kind of complaint?" "Multiple violations of safety protocols, equipment negligence, and retaliatory termination of staff who reported concerns. Your name appears on 18 separate incident reports filed over the past 14 months. We need your statement." "When?" "Today, if possible. We're moving fast on this. Senator Callaway's office has been very insistent." Of course they had. "I can be there at 2. "Perfect. We're set up in a temporary office downtown. I'll text you the address." The call ended. Ethan stood in his kitchen, surrounded by the debris of his old life. Bills, termination papers, a coffee maker that only worked half the time, and felt the ground shifting beneath him. Everything was happening too fast. 3 days ago, he'd been fired. Now he had a job offer from the military and a medical board investigation that could take down an entire hospital administration. The universe had a sick sense of timing. He showered, shaved, put on the one good suit he owned. By the time he pulled up to the downtown address Torres had sent, it was 10 minutes to 2. The building was a bland government office, the kind that smelled like old carpet and photocopier toner. Torres met him in the lobby, mid-40s, tired eyes, the kind of bureaucrat who'd seen enough corruption to stop being surprised by it. "Dr. Vale, thank you for coming." They shook hands. "This shouldn't take long. We just need to go through your complaints and get your account of what happened." They sat in a windowless conference room with a recorder on the table and a stenographer in the corner. Torres opened a thick file folder, and Ethan recognized his own handwriting on the top document. "Let's start with your first complaint, February 9th of last year. You reported a ventilator in the ER that failed safety checks." "That's correct." "What happened after you filed the report?" "Nothing. I followed up twice, never got a response." Torres made a note. "And the ventilator?" "Stayed in rotation. I refused to use it. Got written up for insubordination." They went through all 18 complaints: faulty defibrillators, expired medications, sterilization protocols that weren't being followed, a crash cart missing essential supplies. Every single issue Ethan had flagged, every single warning he'd raised, ignored or buried or dismissed as him being difficult. "And your termination," Torres said, flipping to a new section. "Walk me through what happened that morning." Ethan told him. The ventilator that had already failed twice, his refusal to use it. Marsh calling him into her office, the termination letter, the box, the walk of shame through the hospital. "Did Dr. Marsh give you any reason beyond attitude problems?" "She said I was a liability, that I refused to follow protocol." "Protocol that required you to use faulty equipment?" "Yes." Torres leaned back, studying him. "Dr. Vale, off the record, did you know this was going to blow up the way it has?" "No." "Do you regret filing those complaints?" Ethan didn't hesitate. Not for a second. Torres smiled, grim and approving. "Good. Because we're about to turn Hartwell General inside out, and your complaints are the foundation of the case. The interview lasted another hour. By the time Ethan walked out, the sun was starting to set, painting the sky in shades of fire. His phone had 6 missed calls, 2 from his sister, 1 from an unknown number, 3 from reporters who'd somehow gotten his contact information. He ignored all of them and drove. Not home. Not yet. He needed to clear his head, needed to think. He ended up at a park near the river, sitting on a bench watching the water move. People jogged past. Kids played on the swings. Normal life, continuing like nothing had changed. But everything had changed. His phone buzzed, the unknown number again. This time, he answered. Dr. Vale, this is Julia Rains, investigative reporter with The Post. I'm working on a story about Hartwell General, and I'd like to ask you a few questions. No comment. I understand you're the whistleblower who exposed the safety violations. I said no comment. He hung up. 2 seconds later, she called back. Dr. Vale, please, just hear me out. This story is bigger than you think. Hartwell General isn't the only hospital cutting corners. There's a pattern. I'm not interested in being part of your story. You already are. The medical board just announced they're expanding the investigation to 3 other hospitals in the state, all owned by the same parent company, all with the same safety issues. Your complaints opened the door. Ethan's hand tightened on the phone. What parent company? Meridian Health Systems. They own 15 hospitals across 4 states. And if what we're finding is true, they've been systematically prioritizing profit over patient safety for years. He closed his eyes. It was worse than he thought. Dr. Vale, I know you didn't ask for this, but you're sitting on information that could save lives, real lives. People are going to die if this doesn't come out. Then get it from the medical board. The board moves slow. The courts move slower. By the time this works its way through the system, Meridian will have buried half the evidence and settled the rest. But if you go on record, I'm not going on record. Why not? Because I have a daughter who just watched her dad get fired and dragged into a helicopter by soldiers. Because I'm trying to put my life back together, not blow it up further. Because I'm tired. There was silence on the other end. Then, quietly, I get it, I do. But tired doesn't save the next patient who gets hooked up to faulty equipment. Tired doesn't stop the next doctor from getting fired for doing the right thing. She was good. He'd give her that. If I talk to you, it's off the record. Background only. No names, no quotes. Deal. They talked for 30 minutes. He told her about the culture at Hartwell General, the pressure to move fast and cut costs, the way safety concerns were treated like inconveniences instead of warnings. He told her about other doctors who'd raised flags and been quietly pushed out. He told her about the patients he'd seen suffer because someone decided a profit margin mattered more than a life. How many others are there? Rains asked. Doctors who got pushed out for speaking up? I don't know. At least 4 that I know of personally, probably more. Would they talk? Maybe. If they thought it would actually change something. It will. I promise you that. Ethan wasn't sure he believed in promises anymore, but he gave her 3 names anyway. When he finally got home, it was after dark. His sister's car was in the driveway, lights on in the kitchen. He found her making dinner, his daughter doing homework at the table. You're late, his sister said, not looking up from the stove. I know, sorry. The medical board called. So did 2 reporters. So did someone from the senator's office. I'll handle it. Will you? She turned to face him, wooden spoon in hand like a weapon. Because it looks to me like you're in the middle of a firestorm and you're trying to pretend it's not happening. I'm not pretending anything. Then what are you doing? He didn't have an answer. His daughter looked up from her homework. Are you in trouble? No, Bug. I'm fine. Liar, his sister muttered. After dinner, after his daughter went to bed, after his sister finally stopped lecturing him and went home, Ethan sat in the dark living room with his phone and Colonel Hayes' number on the screen. 24 hours. The deadline was in 6 hours. He thought about the helicopter, the patient, the way his hands had moved without thinking, muscle memory and training taking over, the way it had felt to save a life that mattered, to do the work he was actually built for. He thought about Hartwell General, about Marsh, about the 18 complaints that had been ignored until a senator's son almost died. He thought about the reporter's question. How many others are there? Too many. He pressed call. Hayes picked up on the second ring. Dr. Vale? I'm in. Good. We'll start the paperwork tomorrow. Report to Fort Meade Monday morning, 0700. Bring your medical credentials and... I have a condition. Hayes paused. I'm listening. I want full authority over equipment procurement. No compromises, no cost cutting, no faulty gear. If I say we need it, we get it. Done. And I want final say on all medical decisions. No interference from command, no overrides from politicians. That's a harder sell. That's the deal. Another pause. Longer this time. Then, I'll make it happen. Anything else? Yeah, I want to know that this actually matters. That we're not just putting a Band-Aid on a system that's bleeding out. Dr. Vale, 3 days ago, you saved a senator's son. That senator is now leading a federal investigation into hospital safety standards that could reshape healthcare oversight nationwide. You think that doesn't matter? I think one investigation doesn't fix a broken system. No, but it's a start. And starts matter. He wanted to believe her. Wanted to believe that any of this would actually change things. Monday, 0700. Welcome back, Commander. The title felt strange, foreign, like a coat he'd outgrown trying to fit again. He hung up and sat in the dark, listening to the house settle, thinking about the choice he'd just made. His daughter was asleep upstairs, dreaming whatever 8-year-olds dreamed about. Outside, the neighborhood was quiet. Safe. Normal. But normal was a lie. It always had been. Somewhere in the country, a patient was being hooked up to faulty equipment. A doctor was filing a complaint that would be ignored. A hospital administrator was choosing profit over safety and calling it protocol. And now, for better or worse, Ethan was stepping back into the fight. His phone buzzed one last time, a text from an unknown number. Dr. Vale, this is Dr. Claudia Marsh. We need to talk. It's urgent. He stared at the message, his pulse kicking up. Marsh. The woman who'd fired him. The woman whose career was about to implode because of him. What could she possibly want? He typed back. I have nothing to say to you. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Please. It's about the investigation. There are things you don't know, things they didn't tell you, not interested. They're going to make me the scapegoat, pin everything on me to protect the real people responsible. Ethan hesitated. His finger hovered over the keyboard. Who's responsible? The dots appeared again, then stopped. No response. He waited 5 minutes. 10. Nothing. He tried calling the number. It went straight to voicemail. Something cold settled in his gut. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Marsh knew something she was scared to say over text, something that made her reach out to the man she'd destroyed. He stood, pacing the living room, mind racing. If Marsh was right, if she was being set up to take the fall, that meant someone higher up the chain was pulling strings. Someone with enough power to bury complaints, fire doctors, and walk away clean while she burned. His phone rang. Not Marsh this time. Torres, the investigator. Dr. Vale, sorry to call so late. We have a problem. What kind of problem? Dr. Marsh is dead. The world stopped. What? They found her 2 hours ago, apparent suicide. She left a note taking full responsibility for the safety violations at Hartwell General. Ethan's hands went numb. That's impossible. She just texted me 20 minutes ago. Silence. Then, are you sure? Positive. She wanted to meet, said there were things I didn't know about the investigation. Do you still have the messages? Ethan pulled up the thread. The texts were gone. All of them. Deleted. No, someone erased them. Torres's voice went hard. Dr. Vale, I need you to come in. Now. This just became a criminal investigation. Ethan grabbed his keys and was out the door in 30 seconds, leaving a note for his sister that he knew wouldn't explain anything. The drive downtown took 12 minutes. Every red light, a personal insult, his mind racing faster than the car. Marsh was dead. The texts were gone. Someone had reached into his phone and erased evidence like it never existed. Torres was waiting outside the government building, pacing under a streetlight, phone pressed to his ear. When he saw Ethan, he ended the call mid-sentence. Inrad, now. They moved through empty hallways, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, their footsteps echoing off linoleum. Torres led him to the same conference room from earlier, but this time there were two other people waiting. A man in an expensive suit who screamed federal agent, and a woman with sharp eyes and a recorder already running. Dr. Vale, I'm Agent Reeves, FBI. The man didn't offer his hand. This is Special Agent Cho. Sit down. Ethan sat. Torres took the chair beside him, looking like he'd aged 10 years in the past 2 hours. Tell us about the text messages, Reeves said. Ethan pulled out his phone, showed them the thread, or where the thread used to be. Empty. Like Marsh had never contacted him at all. She texted me at 11:43 p.m., said we needed to talk, that there were things I didn't know about the investigation, that they were making her the scapegoat. They? Cho leaned forward. Who's they? She didn't say. I asked who was responsible. She started typing, then stopped, never responded. Then Torres called. Reeves took the phone, examining it like it might confess. Messages don't just disappear. Someone with access to your account or carrier-level privileges could delete them remotely. Who has that kind of access? Government agencies, telecom security teams, anyone with the right warrant or the right hack. Reeves set the phone down. Doctor, Val, do you believe Dr. Marsh killed herself? No. Why not? Because 20 minutes before she died, she was trying to expose whoever set her up. People planning suicide don't do that. Cho made a note. The official report says she hanged herself in her home office, left a typed suicide note on her computer taking full responsibility for the safety violations at Hartwell General. Conveniently clears everyone else. Too convenient, Ethan said. Agreed. Reeves stood, pacing the small room like a caged animal. Here's what we know. Dr. Marsh was found by her housekeeper at 11:52 p.m. Time of death estimated between 11:30 and midnight. The note was time-stamped 11:47 p.m., which means it was written after you received her last text. Ethan's stomach turned. She was already dead when that note was typed. Or dying, or being forced. Reeves stopped pacing. We're treating this as a homicide until proven otherwise. And you're the last person she tried to contact, which means you're either a witness or a target. The words hung in the air like smoke. What do you mean, target? Someone deleted your messages. Someone didn't want us to know Marsh reached out to you. That tells me you know something they don't want discovered. Or they think you do. Torres spoke up, his voice tight. We need to put you in protective custody. No. Dr. Vale, I have a daughter. I'm not disappearing into a safe house and leaving her alone. Reeves exchanged a look with Cho. Then we put security on your house, round the clock. You don't go anywhere without an escort. For how long? Until we figure out who killed Marsh and why. Ethan's head was spinning. 12 hours ago, his biggest problem was paying bills. Now he was in the middle of a murder investigation, with federal agents telling him his life might be in danger. What about the hospital investigation? He asked. Still active, Torres said, but it just got a lot more complicated. If Marsh was murdered to cover up who's really responsible, that means someone with serious resources is involved. Someone who can kill and make it look clean. Meridian Health Systems, Ethan said quietly. All three of them looked at him. The parent company that owns Hartwell General. A reporter told me they own 15 hospitals across 4 states, all with the same safety issues. What if this goes higher than Marsh? What if she was just middle management following orders? Reeves pulled out his phone, typing rapidly. Meridian Health Systems. CEO is Richard Garrett, former hospital administrator turned corporate exec. Board of directors includes 2 former state senators and a retired federal judge. Revenue last year was $4.2 billion. Jesus, Torres muttered. They've got the money and the connections to make problems disappear, Cho added. If Marsh was about to expose them, they'd have motive. Motive isn't proof, Reeves said. We need evidence. Hard evidence. Something that ties Meridian to the safety violations and to Marsh's death. Ethan thought about the 18 complaints he'd filed. My incident reports. They document everything. Dates, equipment failures, administrative responses. If Meridian was involved, there'd be a paper trail. Where are the originals? Hartwell General's HR database, but I kept copies. Where? Home. In my desk. Reeves was already moving toward the door. We're getting those files now. Cho, coordinate with the field office. I want a full forensic team at Marsh's house and a data recovery specialist on Vale's phone. Torres, pull everything you have on Meridian Health Systems. Contracts, inspections, complaints, all of it. They scattered like a tactical unit. Ethan found himself being hustled into an unmarked sedan, 2 agents he didn't know in the front seat, Reeves riding shotgun. The city blurred past, streetlights streaking across the windows. How did you know? Reeves asked without turning around. Know what? That Marsh didn't kill herself. Most people would have accepted it. Most people didn't get a text from her minutes before she died. No, but you also didn't hesitate. You immediately called it murder. That's instinct, training. You see the pattern before the evidence proves it. Ethan didn't respond. Reeves wasn't wrong. 6 years in combat zones taught you to trust your gut because hesitation got people killed. They pulled up to his house. Lights were still on. His sister must have come back after getting his cryptic note. Reeves got out first, scanning the street, hand resting casually near his holster. The other agents flanked Ethan as they walked to the door. His sister opened it before he could knock, eyes wide with fear and fury. What the hell is going on? You left a note that said, had to go, emergency, don't worry, and now you show up with federal agents? Rachel, I need you to take Lily and go to Mom's, tonight. Ethan, please, I'll explain later. Just trust me. She looked at Reeves, at the agents, at her brother's face. Whatever she saw there made her nod. Give me 10 minutes. She disappeared upstairs. Ethan led Reeves to his home office, a converted bedroom with a desk, a filing cabinet, and stacks of medical journals he'd been meaning to read. He unlocked the bottom drawer and pulled out a folder thick with papers. Printed copies of every complaint he'd filed, every follow-up email, every incident report. Reeves flipped through them, his expression darkening with each page. This is damning. Equipment failures documented across months, ignored complaints, budget memos prioritizing cost savings over safety. If this is what was happening at one hospital, multiply it by 15, Ethan finished. Upstairs, he could hear his sister moving around, packing, his daughter's sleepy voice asking questions, the normal sounds of a life about to be disrupted. Reeves pulled out his phone, photographing each document. We're taking these as evidence. Original and copies. Fine. And you're coming with us. Safe house, protective custody, the whole deal. Non-negotiable. I have a military briefing Monday morning. Fort Meade, 0700. Reeves looked up sharply. You're joining the Army Medical Corps? Civilian contractor, leading a rapid deployment surgical team. Does Colonel Hayes know about this situation? Not yet. She will in about 5 minutes. Reeves was already dialing. We need to coordinate security. If someone's willing to kill Marsh, they might come after you next. The call was brief, tense, Reeves speaking in clipped military shorthand. When he hung up, his face was grim. Hayes is read in. She's coordinating with our field office. You'll still report Monday, but with a security detail, and your team gets vetted by FBI before deployment. That's going to slow everything down. That's going to keep you alive. Rachel appeared in the doorway, overnight bag in one hand, his daughter in her arms. Lily was half asleep, clutching her stuffed rabbit. We're leaving, but you owe me an explanation, a real one. I will, I promise. She looked at him like she wasn't sure she believed it. Then she was gone, car pulling out of the driveway, taillights fading into the night. The house felt too empty, too quiet. Reeves sealed the documents in an evidence bag. We're done here. Let's move. They left through the back door, cutting through the yard to where a second vehicle waited. Standard FBI protocol. Never leave the same way you came in. Ethan climbed into the back seat, exhaustion finally catching up to him. It was almost 3 in the morning. In 4 hours, the sun would be up and the world would keep turning like none of this had happened. But it had. Marsh was dead. Someone had killed her. And that someone knew Ethan existed. The safe house was a nondescript apartment in a building designed to blend in. Generic lobby, bland hallways, doors that all looked the same. Reeves led him to the 3rd floor, unlocking a unit that smelled like industrial cleaner and stale air. You'll stay here until we clear the threat. Agents outside, cameras on all entrances. Don't leave, Don't open the door for anyone except us. How long? As long as it takes. Reeves left him alone with a prepaid phone, a laptop with limited internet access, and instructions to stay quiet. The apartment had 2 bedrooms, a kitchen with an empty fridge, and windows with reinforced glass. Ethan checked every room anyway, old habits kicking in. Exits, sight lines, vulnerabilities. Then he sat on the couch and tried to process the last 6 hours. Marsh was dead. Someone had killed her to keep her quiet. Someone powerful enough to make it look like suicide, erase digital evidence, and walk away clean. And that someone was connected to Meridian Health Systems, a multi-billion-dollar corporation with enough resources to bury anything. His phone buzzed, the prepaid one Reeves had given him, a text from an unknown number. "Dr. Vale, this is Julia Rains. I heard about Marsh. We need to talk." He stared at the message. How did she get this number? This was a secure line FBI issued, supposed to be untraceable. He texted back. "How did you get this number?" "I'm an investigative reporter. It's what I do. Meet me tomorrow. 10 a.m., corner of 5th and Maple. Come alone." "Not a chance. Then people keep dying and the truth stays buried." "Your choice." Ethan's jaw clenched. She was playing him, using guilt and urgency to force his hand, but she was also right. If Meridian was killing people to protect their secrets, doing nothing meant more bodies. He texted Reeves instead. "Reporter wants to meet. Says she has information. Could be a trap." The response came back in seconds. "Absolutely not. Stay in the safe house." Ethan set the phone down and stared at the ceiling. Every instinct told him to trust the FBI, to let them handle it. But instinct also told him that bureaucracy moved slow and killers moved fast. By the time the investigation uncovered proof, how many more people would be silenced? He thought about Marsh's last text. There are things you don't know. What didn't he know? What was worth killing for? Sleep didn't come. He lay on the couch, watching shadows move across the walls, listening to the building settle. At 5 a.m., he gave up and made coffee with the supplies Reeves had left. At 6 a.m., he received a call from Torres. "We've got something. Marsh's computer had a hidden partition, encrypted files. Our tech team cracked it an hour ago." "What's in them?" "Emails. Hundreds of them. Between Marsh and Meridian executives. They were pressuring her to cut costs, ignore safety complaints, falsify inspection reports. She kept everything." "Why?" "Insurance. She knew if it went south, she'd need proof she was following orders. Looks like she was building a case against them." "Then why didn't she go public?" "Fear. The emails show them threatening her, lawsuit, criminal charges, destroying her career. They had her trapped. Until you got fired, and the senator got involved. Then she became a liability." Ethan closed his eyes. Marsh hadn't been a villain, she'd been a victim, caught between her conscience and people who didn't have one. Does this prove Meridian killed her? It gives us motive, but we still need physical evidence tying them to the murder. What about the suicide note? Can't you prove it was faked? We're working on it. Forensics is analyzing the typing patterns, the metadata. But these people are careful. If they hired professionals, the note might be clean. Ethan's mind was racing. The emails, can you use them to freeze Meridian's assets? Stop them from destroying more evidence? Already in motion, we've got warrants being drafted for all 15 hospitals. By end of business today, federal agents will be seizing records across 4 states. They'll know it's coming. They'll run. Let them try. We've flagged the executives, passport alerts, financial monitoring, the works. They're not going anywhere. It should have felt like a win, but all Ethan felt was exhaustion and dread. The net was closing, but people with billions of dollars and political connections didn't go down easy. They fought, and when they fought, people got hurt. At 9:45 a.m., Ethan made a decision. He slipped out of the safe house through a maintenance corridor he'd spotted earlier, moving fast and quiet. The FBI agents outside wouldn't notice for another 10 minutes, long enough for him to get clear. He grabbed a cab 2 blocks away, gave the driver the intersection Rains had specified. 5th and Maple was a coffee shop in a busy downtown district, the kind of place where conversations got lost in the noise. Ethan arrived at 9:58, scanned the crowd, spotted her at a corner table. Julia Raines looked exactly like her profile photo. Mid-30s, sharp features, eyes that didn't miss anything. She saw him and nodded toward the empty chair. He sat down without ordering. "You came," she said. "I've got 5 minutes before the FBI realizes I'm gone. Talk." Meridian didn't just kill Marsh, they've killed before. 3 other whistleblowers in the past 4 years. All ruled accidents or suicides. All right, before they were about to go public. Ethan's blood went cold. "You can prove this?" "I have testimony from family members, autopsy inconsistencies, and a pattern that's too clean to be coincidence. But no hard evidence. That's why I need you." "What do you want from me?" "Access. You're on the inside now, military contractor, medical board witness, the guy who saved a senator's son. You can get into places I can't. You can ask questions that won't raise flags. You want me to investigate while the FBI investigates. I want you to find what the FBI won't. They're bound by warrants and procedure. I'm not. And neither are you." "I'm not a reporter." "No, you're a doctor who doesn't quit. That's better." His prepaid phone buzzed. "Reeves, where the hell are you?" He ignored it. "What's your angle?" he asked Raines. "Why risk going after Meridian?" "Because I watched my sister die in a Meridian hospital 5 years ago. Faulty equipment during routine surgery. They settled with my family for 6 figures and made us sign an NDA. I've been digging into them ever since." She slid a folder across the table. Thin, but heavy. "That's everything I have. Names, dates, incidents. If we work together, we can take them down. Actually take them down, not just slap them with fines they'll pay out of pocket change." Ethan opened the folder. The first page was a photo of a young woman in a hospital bed, smiling despite the tubes and wires. The caption underneath, Sarah Raines, age 28, died during gallbladder removal due to ventilator malfunction. He looked up at Julia, saw the pain behind the professional mask. "I'm in," he said, "but we do this smart. No cowboy moves. We coordinate with the FBI, not against them." "Agreed." His phone buzzed again. "Multiple texts now. You have 60 seconds to respond before I send a team to drag you back. This is not a game. Marsh is dead. You could be next." Ethan stood. "I have to go. Send me everything digitally, encrypted. I'll figure out how to access it." "Watch your back, Dr. Vale. These people don't leave loose ends." He was already walking away, out the door, hailing another cab. His phone rang. Reeves, furious. "Where are you?" "On my way back. I had to follow a lead." "You had to—" Reeves bit off whatever he was about to say. "Get back to the safe house. Now. We've got a problem." "What kind of problem?" "Richard Garrett, CEO of Meridian. He just held a press conference." Ethan's stomach dropped. "Saying what?" That Dr. Claudia Marsh was a rogue administrator acting alone, that Meridian had no knowledge of safety violations, and that they're cooperating fully with authorities. Reeves paused. "He also announced Meridian is filing a defamation lawsuit against you personally for making false accusations that damaged their reputation." The cab stopped at a red light. Ethan stared out the window at normal people living normal lives, completely unaware that empires were being built on their suffering. "Let them sue," he said quietly. "I'm not backing down. They're not trying to win. They're trying to bury you in legal fees until you go away. Then they don't know me very well." He hung up. The cab started moving again. His mind was already racing ahead. Next moves, contingencies, ways to hit back. He'd spent 6 years trying to save lives in a broken system. Now he was going to break the people who broke it. The safe house came into view. FBI agents standing outside, tense and waiting. He paid the driver and got out. Reeves was on him before he reached the door. "Pull that again, and I'll arrest you for obstruction." "Noted." "I'm serious, Vale. These people play for keeps. You can't just—" The explosion cut him off. Not close, maybe 10 blocks away, but big enough that the ground shook and car alarms started screaming. Reeves's phone was ringing before the echo faded. He answered, listened for 5 seconds, his face going pale. "When? How many casualties?" A pause. "Jesus, okay, lock it down. I'm on my way." He looked at Ethan. "That was Hartwell General. Someone just bombed the records room." Smoke rose from downtown like a black fist punching through the morning sky. Reeves was already in motion, barking orders into his phone, coordinating with agents across the city. Ethan stood frozen on the sidewalk, watching the plume grow, thinking about all the records that had just turned to ash, patient files, incident reports, evidence that could have buried Meridian forever. "Get inside," Reeves snapped at him. "Now!" But Ethan was already moving toward the car. "I'm coming with you." "Like hell you are." "That's my hospital. Those are my colleagues. If there are casualties, you need a trauma surgeon on site." Reeves hesitated for half a second, running calculations. Then he grabbed Ethan's arm and shoved him toward the vehicle. "Stay in the car. You don't move unless I say so." The drive took 4 minutes, sirens screaming, traffic parting like water. Hartwell General loomed ahead, the east wing billowing smoke, windows blown out, debris scattered across the parking lot. Fire trucks were already there, hoses deployed, paramedics rushing toward the building. People poured out of exits, staff in scrubs, patients in gowns, everyone moving with the jerky panic of disaster. Reeves's phone rang again. He answered, listened, his jaw tightening. Confirmed fatalities? Ethan's chest constricted. 2 dead, 7 injured. Bomb was placed in the medical records storage room, 3rd floor. Detonated at 10:17 a.m. Reeves glanced at Ethan. Records clerk and a security guard, both killed instantly. Names flashed through Ethan's mind. People he'd worked with, talked to in hallways, shared coffee with during overnight shifts. He didn't know which 2 were gone, but he'd known them. That was enough. "This is a message," Ethan said quietly. "No, this is evidence destruction with a body count." Reeves was out of the car before it fully stopped, flashing his badge at the perimeter. "FBI, I need access to the blast site." A fire captain intercepted them. "Building's not stable. We can't let anyone in until structural engineering clears it." "How long?" 2 hours minimum." "We don't have 2 hours." Reeves turned to Ethan. "What's the fastest way to medical records from the outside?" "Service entrance on the north side. Freight elevator goes straight to the 3rd floor." "Is it still standing?" "Only one way to find out." They moved around the building, staying clear of the main damage. The north entrance was intact but locked down. A security guard stationed outside, looking lost and terrified. "FBI," Reeves said again, badge up. "Open it." "Sir, I can't." 2 people just died because someone destroyed evidence in a federal investigation. "Open the door or I arrest you for obstruction." The guard's hand shook as he swiped his keycard. The door clicked open. Inside, the hallway was dark, emergency lighting casting everything in red. Smoke drifted through the air, acrid and chemical. Reeves pulled out a flashlight, moved forward carefully. Ethan followed, muscle memory kicking in. Combat medicine training, operating in damaged buildings, staying low and aware. They found the freight elevator. Dead. No power. "Stairs," Ethan said, pointing to the emergency exit. They climbed in darkness, footsteps echoing off concrete. 3rd floor. The door was warped from the blast, hanging crooked on its hinges. Reeves forced it open. The hallway beyond looked like a war zone. Ceiling tiles down, walls cracked, fluorescent lights dangling by wires. And at the far end, where medical records used to be, there was just a hole, twisted metal and scorched walls, and the smell of burned paper and flesh. "Jesus," Reeves breathed. Ethan stepped into the ruins, glass crunching under his feet. Filing cabinets were blown apart, their contents incinerated. Computer servers reduced to melted slag. Decades of medical history gone in seconds. But not everything. In the corner behind what used to be a desk, a fireproof safe sat untouched. Ethan recognized it. Old model, the kind they used to store original copies of sensitive documents before everything went digital. "There, eh?" He pointed. Reeves was already on it, pulling a compact breaching tool from his tactical vest. 2 minutes later, the safe popped open. Inside were files. Dozens of them. Incident reports, safety audits, internal memos, all the documents Meridian thought they'd destroyed. "They didn't know about the safe," Ethan said, "or they didn't have time to breach it before the bomb went off." Reeves started photographing everything, working fast. "This is leverage. Real leverage." Footsteps echoed from the stairwell. Both men turned, Reeves's hand dropping to his weapon. 2 figures emerged from the smoke, Torres and Agent Cho, both looking grim. Building's being evacuated, Torres said. We need to leave, now. We just found, I don't care. Structural says the third floor could collapse any minute. Move. They grabbed what they could carry and ran. Down the stairs, through the service entrance, out into daylight that felt too bright and normal. Behind them, something groaned deep in the building's bones. They made it 50 feet before the third floor gave way with a sound like thunder, buckling inward, taking half the east wing with it. Debris rained down. People screamed. Fire crews scattered. Ethan stood there watching the hospital where he'd spent 6 years trying to save lives fold in on itself like a dying thing. 2 people were dead. 7 more injured, all because someone decided evidence was worth more than human life. Reeves's phone rang. He answered, listened for 10 seconds, then looked at Ethan with something almost like satisfaction. That was the director. We've got authorization to arrest Richard Garrett. Charges include obstruction of justice, evidence tampering, and conspiracy to commit murder. When? Now, team's already en route to Meridian headquarters. Cho pulled up footage on her tablet, live news feed from across town. Meridian's gleaming corporate tower, FBI vehicles surrounding it, agents in tactical gear moving inside. Richard Garrett being led out in handcuffs, his expensive suit looking ridiculous next to body armor and assault rifles. Cameras everywhere, reporters shouting questions. Garrett's face was a mask of rage and disbelief. This wasn't how his day was supposed to go. This wasn't how people like him ended up, but it was happening anyway. They're taking him to federal holding, Reeves said. Arraignment tomorrow morning, no bail. What about the others, the board members, the executives who gave the orders? Being rounded up as we speak. Warrants issued for 12 individuals across 4 states. Ethan felt something unknot in his chest. Not relief. Not yet. But something close to it. Torres appeared beside them, holding one of the files they'd pulled from the safe. You need to see this. It was an internal memo dated 3 months ago. From Richard Garrett, to all hospital administrators in the Meridian network. Cost reduction targets for Q4 must be met by any means necessary. Safety audits will be handled at corporate level. All incident reports to be forwarded directly to legal before filing with state boards. Budget overrides on equipment replacement approved. Projected savings, $47 million annually. They put a price on it, Ethan said quietly. $47 million. That's what lives were worth to them. This is premeditation. Torres was already on his phone. This proves the safety violations weren't isolated incidents. This was corporate policy. More files, more memos. A spreadsheet tracking equipment failures across all 15 hospitals with a column labeled Acceptable Loss Threshold. Another document outlining a PR strategy for handling whistleblowers. Discredit, isolate, terminate employment, pursue legal action if necessary. And buried at the bottom, a list of names. Problem employees requiring management intervention. Dr. Claudia Marsh was 3rd on the list. Ethan's name was 7th. They were going to come after you anyway, Cho said. Even if you hadn't filed complaints, they profiled anyone who might become a liability. Ethan stared at his name typed in sterile corporate font, marked for destruction like faulty equipment. He thought about Marsh, about the text she'd sent before dying, about the 3 other whistleblowers Julia Raines had mentioned. How many people did they kill? He asked. We're still counting, Reeves said, but based on what we're finding, at least 6 deaths directly tied to covering up safety violations. Maybe more. 6 murders. Dozens of negligent deaths from faulty equipment. Hundreds of patients who'd suffered complications that could have been prevented. Also, a corporation could hit its profit margins. Ethan's phone buzzed. The prepaid one. A text from Julia Raines. Watching the arrests on live TV. We did it. Call me when you can. He pocketed the phone without responding. They hadn't done anything yet. Garrett was in custody, but custody wasn't conviction. Rich people with expensive lawyers had a way of walking out of courtrooms like nothing happened. What's the case look like? He asked Reeves. Honestly? Strong. We've got documents, testimony, financial records. But Garrett's already lawyered up. Best defense team money can buy. This is going to be a fight. Then we fight. Reeves studied him. You understand what that means? Testifying. Months of depositions. Your life under a microscope. They'll dig up everything. Finances, relationships, medical history, looking for anything to discredit you. Let them look. They'll paint you as a disgruntled employee with an axe to grind. They'll say you're lying for attention or revenge. I don't care what they say. I care about the truth. The truth doesn't always win in court. It will this time. Reeves nodded slowly, something like respect crossing his face. Okay, then we build this case properly. No shortcuts, no leaks, everything by the book. Because if we make one mistake, their lawyers will tear it apart. An ambulance screamed past, carrying one of the injured to another hospital. Ethan watched it go, thinking about the people inside Hartwell General when the bomb went off. Doctors, nurses, patients who'd trusted the system to keep them safe. The system had failed them. He'd failed them. But not anymore. I want to see him, Ethan said suddenly. Who? Garrett? I want to look him in the eye. That's not protocol. I don't care about protocol. He put my name on a hit list. He killed Marsh. He destroyed lives for profit. I want him to see what that looks like. Reeves exchanged glances with Cho and Torres. Some silent communication passed between them. One visit, Reeves said finally. Monitored, recorded. You don't touch him, don't threaten him, don't give his lawyers any ammunition. Understood? Understood. They drove to the federal building in silence. Downtown was chaos. News crews everywhere. Protesters already gathering outside Meridian headquarters with signs demanding justice. Traffic snarled by rubberneckers trying to catch a glimpse of the unfolding scandal. Inside the federal building, everything was cold efficiency. Concrete walls, fluorescent lights, the smell of industrial cleaner and stale coffee. Reeves led Ethan through security, down a hallway lined with holding cells, to an interrogation room at the end. Richard Garrett sat alone at a metal table, hands cuffed in front of him, still wearing his tailored suit, but looking smaller somehow, diminished. When Ethan walked in, Garrett's eyes flickered with something between recognition and contempt. Dr. Vale? His voice was smooth despite everything. Come to gloat? Ethan sat down across from him, keeping his hands flat on the table. Reeves stood by the door, watching. I came to understand, Ethan said. Understand what? Why? Why you did it? Marsh, the bomb, the safety violations, all of it. What was worth killing for? Garrett laughed, sharp and bitter. You wouldn't understand. You're a doctor. You think in terms of individual lives. I think in terms of systems. The healthcare industry is collapsing under its own weight. Regulations, lawsuits, insurance companies squeezing margins down to nothing. Someone has to make the hard choices. Hard choices? Is that what you call letting people die with faulty equipment? I call it pragmatism. Every hospital in America is making the same calculations. We just had the courage to be efficient about it. You had the arrogance to think you could get away with it. Garrett's smile was cold. I did get away with it, for years. Your little crusade didn't change anything. I'll be out on bail by tomorrow, back in my office by next week. My lawyers are already filing motions. And you? He leaned forward. You'll be tied up in litigation for the rest of your career. Every medical decision you make will be second-guessed. Every patient you treat will be a liability. I'll make sure of it. Ethan didn't flinch. You're right about one thing. I think in terms of individual lives. Like the records clerk who died this morning. Like the security guard. Like Dr. Marsh. You don't even know their names, do you? Garrett said nothing. Sarah Raines, Ethan continued, 28 years old, died during routine surgery because of a faulty ventilator. Her sister's been investigating you for 5 years. Michael Torres, the investigator who's been building this case for months. Agent Reeves, who lost a friend to medical negligence and made it his mission to stop people like you. He paused. And me. The doctor you tried to erase. We all have names. We all matter. And we're the ones who took you down. Garrett's composure cracked, just slightly. You haven't taken down anything. This is a hiccup, a PR problem. Meridian will survive. Maybe, but you won't be part of it. You don't know that. Yeah, I do. Ethan stood, because I spent 6 years trying to change a broken system from the inside. And I learned something. Systems protect themselves. They close ranks. They sacrifice whoever's convenient to survive. And right now, you're convenient. Meridian's already drafting a statement throwing you under the bus. blaming everything on your unauthorized directives, making you the scapegoat. For the first time, real fear crossed Garrett's face. You're lying. Check the news. Your board of directors held an emergency meeting an hour ago, voted unanimously to terminate you with cause, freeze your assets, cooperate fully with federal investigators. Ethan leaned on the table. You built an empire on disposable people. Now you're disposable too. He walked out without looking back. In the hallway, Reeves was waiting. That was either very smart or very stupid. Which one? I'll let you know after the trial. They emerged from the federal building into afternoon light that felt surreal after everything. Ethan's phone rang, his actual phone this time, not the prepaid. Colonel Hayes. He answered. Vale. Commander, we need to talk about Monday. Her voice was all business. Given current circumstances, we're accelerating your onboarding. You'll report to Fort Meade tomorrow at 0600 for briefing and team assignment. Tomorrow? I thought plans changed. Senator Callaway wants rapid deployment surgical teams operational ASAP. You're leading the first unit, non-negotiable. I'm in the middle of a federal investigation. I'm aware. FBI's coordinating security. You'll have protection during training and deployment. But Dr. Vale, this is happening. The senator's son made a full recovery. He's calling you the surgeon who saved his life. That carries weight, political weight. We're using it. Ethan closed his eyes, feeling the pieces move on a board he couldn't fully see. Understood. Oh, 600, don't be late. She hung up. Reeves was watching him. Military? Yeah, reporting for duty tomorrow morning. Good timing, gets you out of the media circus for a while. Let us handle Garrett and Meridian. I still need to testify. And you will. But not tomorrow. Tomorrow, you go be a soldier again. Ethan looked back at the federal building, thinking about Garrett sitting in that interrogation room, his empire crumbling around him. It should have felt like victory, but victory was a luxury for people who hadn't lost colleagues to a bomb. His phone buzzed again. Torres this time. Dr. Vale, you need to see this, now. What is it? Just get to the hospital, the one that's still standing. Meet me in the West Wing. The drive back to what remained of Hartwell General took 20 minutes through traffic that seemed determined to make everything harder. Torres was waiting in the administrative wing, the part of the building that hadn't collapsed, holding a laptop. What am I looking at? Ethan asked. Torres turned the screen. Security footage, timestamp from this morning, 30 minutes before the explosion. A man in maintenance coveralls entering the medical records room, carrying a toolbox. He worked efficiently, placing something behind the filing cabinets, checking his watch, leaving. Who is he? Former military, demolitions expert, currently employed by a private security firm that does contract work for Meridian. Bingo. We've got him on camera. We've got his employment records. We've got bank transfers from a Meridian Shell account to his personal account dated 2 days ago. $50,000. Ethan stared at the screen, watching the bomber move through the frame with casual confidence. Hired muscle. A professional doing a job. Where is he now? In custody. FBI picked him up an hour ago. He's already talking. Full confession in exchange for reduced charges. Says he was hired to destroy records. Didn't know about the casualties. Torres closed the laptop. This ties Meridian directly to the bombing. Not just Garrett, the corporation itself. Can they survive that? Legally? Maybe. Financially? Absolutely not. Stock's already in free fall. Investors are bailing. Class action lawsuits are being filed as we speak. By this time next week, Meridian Health Systems will be a cautionary tale in business schools. Ethan felt something shift inside him. Not satisfaction, not happiness. Just the quiet recognition that sometimes, rarely, the system actually worked. His phone rang one more time. Julia Raines. He answered. What? I'm publishing tomorrow. Front page above the fold. Everything. Marcia's murder, the bombing, the corporate conspiracy, all of it. I wanted you to know before it goes live. How much did you hold back? Nothing. This is scorched earth. Every name, every document, every dirty secret. They wanted to bury the truth. I'm putting it on a billboard. They'll sue. Let them. I've got 6 lawyers who work pro bono for cases like this. We'll be fine. Ethan leaned against the wall, exhaustion finally catching up. What happens after? After the arrests and the trials and the headlines? We do it again. Find the next corrupt corporation. Expose the next cover-up. There's always another one. That's a depressing worldview. That's reality. But hey, at least we won this round. She hung up. Ethan stood in the empty hallway of a hospital that would probably never fully recover, thinking about wins and losses and the cost of both. 2 people were dead, Marsh was dead, lives had been destroyed. But Garrett was in custody. Meridian was collapsing. The truth was coming out. Was that a win? He honestly didn't know. Reeves appeared from around the corner. We're done here. Let's get you back to the safe house. Big day tomorrow. They drove in silence. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and red. Normal people were heading home from normal jobs, worrying about normal problems. Ethan envied them. At the safe house, Reeves walked him to the door. Get some sleep. You're going to need it. Thanks for everything. Don't thank me yet. Trial's going to be hell. I know. Reeves started to leave, then stopped. Vale, off the record, what you did, standing up to Meridian, refusing to back down even when it cost you everything, that took guts. Real guts. Not a lot of people have that. I didn't do it for recognition. I know. That's why it matters. He left. Ethan went inside, locked the door, and sat in the dark living room of a safe house that didn't feel safe at all. Tomorrow he'd report to Fort Meade, start a new chapter, lead a surgical team, try to do something good in a world that seemed determined to punish people for trying. His phone buzzed one final time. Unknown number. He almost ignored it, then looked. A single line of text. You won the battle, but the war isn't over. A friend. Ethan stared at the message, ice forming in his veins. He tried calling the number, disconnected. Tried tracing it, blocked. Tried everything. Nothing. Someone was still out there, someone who knew his number, knew what was happening, knew enough to send a warning or a threat. He sat in the darkness, phone in hand, waiting for sunrise and whatever came next, knowing with absolute certainty that while Garrett was in custody and Meridian was burning, the people who'd built the system were still out there, still watching, still waiting. Ethan didn't sleep. He sat in the darkness with the cryptic message glowing on his phone screen until the words burned into his retinas. You won the battle, but the war isn't over. At 4 a.m., he gave up pretending rest would come and started preparing for Fort Meade. Shower, shave, the uniform he'd pulled from storage, still fitting after 6 years, still carrying the weight of who he used to be. By 5:30, Reeves was at the door with coffee and a grim expression. You get the message too? Ethan asked. Reeves nodded. Sent to me, Torres, Cho, and Senator Calloway. Same number, same warning. Tech team traced it to a burner phone purchased with cash 3 months ago. Dead end. Someone's been planning this for a while. Or watching, waiting to see if we'd actually take down Garrett before showing their hand. Reeves handed him the coffee. Could be another Meridian executive. Could be someone from the board trying to intimidate us into backing off. Could be nothing. You don't believe that? No, I don't. Reeves pulled out his tablet, showing Ethan a series of financial records. We've been digging into Meridian's corporate structure. Turns out Garrett wasn't the top of the pyramid. Meridian Health Systems is owned by a parent investment firm called Apex Holdings, and Apex owns stakes in 43 other healthcare companies across 12 states. Ethan's coffee went cold in his hand. How big are we talking? Combined annual revenue of $22 billion. Hospitals, insurance companies, pharmaceutical distributors, medical equipment manufacturers, vertical integration on a scale that makes Meridian look like a corner store. And they all operate the same way? We don't know yet, but if the pattern holds, Reeves trailed off, the implications hanging heavy between them. If the pattern held, Meridian wasn't an isolated case. It was the blueprint, copied and executed across dozens of companies, hundreds of hospitals, affecting millions of patients. The system wasn't broken in one place. It was designed this way. Who owns Apex? Ethan asked. That's where it gets interesting. Shell companies layered on shell companies, but we traced it back to a single individual, Victor Harmon, former health insurance executive, currently sits on the board of 3 federal healthcare policy committees. The name meant nothing to Ethan, but the position did. Someone with that kind of influence didn't just profit from a corrupt system. They built it, shaped policy to protect it, Made sure the right people looked the other way. Harmon sent the message, Ethan said. Probably, or someone working for him. Either way, it's a power play, reminding us that taking down Garrett doesn't touch the real infrastructure. Then we go after the infrastructure. We're trying, but Harmon's insulated. Everything's legal on paper. The safety violations, the cost cutting, the negligence, that's all corporate policy, not criminal conspiracy. And policy is protected. Until it kills people. Even then, we can prosecute Garrett for the bombing and Marsh's murder. We can fine Meridian into bankruptcy. But Harmon? He walks, and Apex keeps operating. Ethan stared at the financial records, following the money through layers of corporate obfuscation, seeing the machine for what it was. Not a collection of bad actors making individual choices. A system engineered to prioritize profit over human life, with legal protection built into every level. So what do? You go be a soldier. Let me handle Harmon. Reeves stood, checking his watch. Car's waiting. You've got 40 minutes to make it to Fort Meade. The drive was quiet, the city still half asleep, streetlights flickering off as dawn crept across the horizon. Ethan watched the world wake up through tinted windows, thinking about all the people who'd passed through hospitals today. Patients trusting the system, doctors trying to do good work inside a structure designed to exploit them both. Fort Meade rose from the landscape like a statement of purpose: order, discipline, function. The gate guard checked Ethan's credentials, waved them through. Reeves's phone rang as they pulled into the visitor lot. He answered, listened for 10 seconds, his face going pale. When? Are you sure? A pause. Jesus, okay, lock it down. I'll be there in 20. He hung up, looked at Ethan. Victor Harmon is dead. Found in his home office an hour ago. Single gunshot wound to the head. Apparent suicide. The words hit like a physical blow. No. Suicide note on his computer. Full confession. Says he built Apex as a healthcare optimization model. Didn't realize it would lead to patient deaths. Couldn't live with the guilt. That's bullshit. He sent that message 6 hours ago. People planning suicide don't send cryptic warnings. I know. Reeves was already texting, coordinating with his team. This is the same play as Marsh. Make it look like suicide. Close the investigation. Protect whoever's actually running things. Who's left? If Garrett and Harmon are both gone, then someone higher climbed the ladder, someone we haven't identified yet. Reeves opened the car door. I have to go. Cho's already at the scene. But Vale, listen to me. You're visible now. High profile. If they took out Harmon, they might come after you next. Let them try. I'm serious. Watch your back. Trust no one you haven't personally vetted. And for the love of everything, don't go off alone. He was gone, the car peeling out of the lot, leaving Ethan standing in the cold morning air with the weight of 2 more bodies added to the count. Colonel Hayes found him 10 minutes later, striding across the parade ground in full uniform, every inch the career officer. Commander Vale, you're early. Good. She gestured toward a nondescript building on the north end of the base. Let's walk. They moved in silence for a moment, Hayes setting a pace that was just short of a run. Finally, she spoke. I heard about Harmon, and before you ask, yes, the senator knows. He's convening an emergency session of the Armed Services Committee this afternoon. Full investigation into Apex Holdings and every company in their portfolio. Will it matter? Depends on what they find. But it's leverage, political leverage, the kind that makes corporations nervous. She stopped at the building entrance, turned to face him. Dr. Vale, I'm going to be direct. You've been through hell this week. Fired, recruited, thrust into a murder investigation, and now you're about to lead a surgical team into situations most doctors can't even imagine. If you need time, I don't. Then understand what you're signing up for. This isn't the old military. The teams we're building operate in gray zones, disaster areas, conflict regions, places where civilian healthcare has collapsed and military resources are the only option. You'll make life and death decisions with incomplete information and zero backup, and you'll do it knowing that every choice will be scrutinized, second-guessed, and potentially used against you. Sounds familiar. Hayes almost smiled. I suppose it does. Come on, your team's waiting. Inside, the building was all business. Briefing rooms, equipment storage, medical bays set up for rapid deployment. Hayes led him to a conference room where 6 people sat waiting. 3 surgeons, 2 trauma nurses, one combat medic, all former military, all carrying the same weight behind their eyes that Ethan recognized in the mirror. Commander Vale, Hayes said formally, your team, they've been briefed on the mission parameters. You have 72 hours to get operational. Questions? One of the surgeons, a woman in her 40s with steady hands and a skeptical expression, raised her hand. Sir, with respect, we heard about what happened at Hartwell General. The bombing. Is this team a target? Ethan met her eyes. Possibly. The people responsible for that attack are being hunted by the FBI. Some are in custody, others are dead. But the system that enabled them is still operational. So yes, there's risk. If that's a problem, speak now. No one moved. Good. Then let's be clear about something. This team exists because civilian healthcare failed, because hospitals prioritized profit over patients and people died. We're the backstop. The last option when everything else falls apart. And we will not fail the way the system failed. He paused. I won't ask any of you to do something I wouldn't do myself. But I will ask you to be better than the broken system we're trying to fix. Questions? Silence. Then the skeptical surgeon nodded once, something like respect crossing her face. Hayes stepped forward. You deploy in 3 days. First mission is domestic. Hurricane relief in the Gulf Coast. Category 4 made landfall yesterday. Took out 2 hospitals. Trapped thousands. FEMA's overwhelmed. You're going in to set up a mobile surgical unit and stabilize critical patients until evacuation routes open. The team shifted into operational mode immediately, pulling maps, coordinating equipment lists, running through protocols. Ethan watched them work, feeling the old rhythms return. This was what he knew, what he was built for. His phone buzzed. Torres. Need you downtown, Harmon's house. Now. He showed the message to Hayes. She read it, frowned. Go, but take security. And Vale? Be back by nightfall. We've got work to do. The drive back into the city felt like moving between worlds. Military precision behind him. Chaos ahead. Torres met him at Harmon's estate, a mansion in an exclusive neighborhood where wealth insulated residents from the kind of problems that touched normal people. What am I looking at? Ethan asked. Torres led him inside, past crime scene techs and FBI agents, into a home office that looked like a museum exhibit for corporate excess. Mahogany desk, leather chairs, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking manicured gardens, and in the center of it all, a bloodstain on an expensive rug where Victor Harmon had supposedly ended his life. Suicide note's a copy-paste of Marsh's, Torres said. Same phrasing, same structure, same convenient confession that clears everyone else. Medical examiner says time of death was around 3 a.m. Single gunshot, contact wound, powder burns consistent with self-infliction. But Harmon's security system was disabled 2 hours before he died. Cameras went offline, motion sensors deactivated. Someone with access code shut it down from inside the house. So he let them in. Or they had keys, were checking visitor logs, but this guy was paranoid. Triple locks, biometric scanners, the works. Whoever got in knew exactly how to bypass everything. Ethan moved around the room, looking for anything that didn't fit. A laptop sat open on the desk, the suicide note still on screen. He leaned closer, reading. I built Apex Holdings to optimize healthcare delivery. I believed efficiency and profit could coexist with patient care. I was wrong. The system I created prioritized margins over lives. I take full responsibility. I cannot live with what I've done. Perfect. Too perfect. He didn't write this, Ethan said. We know, but proving it is another story. Torres pulled up photos on his phone. Here's where it gets weird. We found a safe in Harmon's bedroom. Empty, completely cleaned out. But neighbors reported seeing a moving truck here 2 days ago, middle of the night. 3 men, professional crew, took 6 hours to load up. Loading what? That's the question. Harmon's lawyer says he wasn't planning to move, wasn't selling, hadn't mentioned any renovations. So what were they taking? Evidence. Ethan's mind was racing. Files, records, anything that could tie Apex to the healthcare violations. Harmon kept insurance, same as Marsh, and someone knew about it. If that's true, then the people who killed him now have everything, every dirty secret, every piece of leverage, all the proof we need. Gone. Ethan's phone rang. Reeves. We've got a problem. Garrett made bail. What? You said? Judge overruled it. Released on $10 million bond, GPS monitoring, surrendered passport. He walked out of federal holding 20 minutes ago. How is that possible? New lawyers. The kind that cost 7 figures and know which judges to call. He's claiming the evidence against him was obtained illegally, that his rights were violated, that he's being persecuted for corporate policy decisions that aren't criminal. Reeves sounded furious. And the bombing, his team's arguing he was set up, that someone framed him to take down Meridian. That's insane. That's money. And it works. Ethan felt the ground shifting again, all the progress they'd made unraveling in real time. Garrett was free. Harmon was dead. The evidence was gone. And somewhere, someone was watching it all happen exactly according to plan. Where's Garrett now? He asked. Penthouse apartment downtown. Under guard, but technically free. Reeves paused. Don't even think about it. Think about what? Whatever you're thinking, let us handle this legally. Legal didn't stop him from making bail. Legal didn't save Marsh or Harmon. Legal doesn't fix a system designed to protect people like him. Vale, he hung up. Torres was watching him. What are you going to do? Something stupid, probably illegal, definitely necessary. Ethan pulled up the address where Garrett was staying. I need to talk to him. One more time, face to face. You can't just walk into his apartment. No, but I can get close enough to make him nervous. The building was glass and steel in the financial district, the kind of place where entry cost more than most people earned in a year. Ethan walked past twice, scoping security, looking for weaknesses. 3 guards in the lobby. Keycard access to elevators. Cameras covering every angle. He couldn't get in. Not conventionally. But he didn't need to. He pulled out his phone, found Garrett's number, publicly listed on Meridian's corporate directory, and called. It rang 4 times. Then a voice he recognized, smooth and confident despite everything. Who is this? The man whose life you tried to destroy. We need to talk. Silence. Then, I have nothing to say to you. Yeah, you do, because I know something you don't, and it's going to end you. You're bluffing. Harmon's dead. His safe was cleaned out. Someone has all the evidence he kept on Apex Holdings. Every email, every memo, every piece of proof showing the whole operation. And they're not FBI. They're not prosecutors. They're someone who benefits from keeping it secret. Someone you trusted. More silence. Longer this time. What do you want? Meet me. 1 hour. Public place. Just talk. Why would I do that? Because whoever killed Harmon and Marsh is tying up loose ends. And Garrett, you're a loose end now. Out on bail, publicly visible. A target for every investigator and journalist in the country. How long before you become inconvenient to the people protecting you? He could hear breathing on the other end. Calculation. Fear. Where? Garrett asked finally. Riverside Park, north entrance. Come alone. I'm under GPS monitoring. I can't just... You're free on bail. Take a walk. Get some air. I'm sure your lawyers can explain it to the court if anyone asks. Ethan hung up before Garrett could respond. It was a gamble. A reckless move that would either force a confession or get him killed. But playing it safe hadn't stopped the bodies from piling up. Riverside Park was nearly empty at midday. A few joggers, some parents with strollers, no one paying attention to the man sitting on a bench overlooking the water. Ethan waited, watching the entrance, half expecting Garrett not to show. But 47 minutes later he did. Richard Garrett walked alone, wearing casual clothes that still looked expensive, moving with the careful awareness of someone who knew he was being watched. He spotted Ethan and approached slowly, sitting on the opposite end of the bench. I'm here. Talk. Who killed Harmon? Ethan asked. I don't know. Yes, you do. You knew about Marsh too, didn't you? About the plan to make her the scapegoat. Garrett stared straight ahead. Dr. Vale, you're out of your depth. You think you've exposed some grand conspiracy, but all you've done is attract attention to one piece of a much larger machine. Meridian was expendable. Harmon was expendable. Even I'm expendable if it protects the real infrastructure. Then tell me who runs it. Why would I? Because they're going to kill you. Same as Marsh, same as Harmon. You're a liability now. The moment your trial starts, the moment you're forced to testify, you become a threat, and threats get eliminated. Yeah, Garrett finally looked at him. You think offering me protection will make me talk? The FBI can't protect me. No one can. These people own judges, senators, entire regulatory agencies. They built the system. They are the system. Then burn it down from the inside. Testify. Give us names. Actual evidence that can't be buried. And spend the rest of my life in witness protection? Assuming I survive that long? Garrett laughed, bitter and hollow. I made my choice years ago. I knew what I was getting into. I just didn't realize I was replaceable. Everyone's replaceable to people like that. Including you, Doctor. You think becoming a military hero protects you. It just makes you a more interesting target. Garrett stood. Go back to your surgical team. Save lives. Forget about systems and corruption and things you can't change. It's the smart play. I'm not interested in smart. I'm interested in right. Right doesn't win. Money wins. Power wins. You'll learn that eventually. Garrett started walking away, then stopped. For what it's worth, I didn't want Marsh dead. I didn't want the bombing. I thought we could handle this cleanly. But once the senator got involved, once federal investigators started digging, it was out of my control. I became a liability, just like everyone else. Who gave the orders? Garrett looked back one last time. If I tell you, they'll kill me before I make it back to my apartment. If I don't, maybe I have a few more days. That's the calculation. That's always the calculation with them. He walked away, disappearing into the park, leaving Ethan alone with more questions and no answers. Ethan's phone rang. Senator Calloway. Dr. Vale, we need to meet. My office, 1 hour. Senator, I'm in the middle of... I know where you are and who you just talked to. We have surveillance on Garrett. Now get to my office before you make the situation worse. The line went dead. The senator's office was inside a federal building surrounded by security that made Fort Meade look casual. Ethan passed through 3 checkpoints, surrendered his phone, and was escorted to a conference room where Calloway waited with Reeves, Torres, and 2 people he didn't recognize. A woman in her 60s with silver hair and sharp eyes, and a younger man taking notes on a tablet. Dr. Vale, this is Attorney General Patricia Morrison and her senior investigator. Calloway gestured to the empty chair. Sit. We have a lot to discuss. Ethan sat. Morrison studied him like a specimen under glass. You've had a busy week, she said. Fired, recruited by the military, became the centerpiece of a federal investigation, and now you're conducting unauthorized interrogations of suspects out on bail. He's not a suspect anymore. He made bail. Semantics. You shouldn't have contacted him. Someone needed to. He knows who's running Apex. Who ordered the killings? He's terrified. Terrified people make mistakes, which is exactly what we're counting on. Morrison pulled up files on a monitor. We've been investigating Apex Holdings for 8 months, long before the Meridian situation exploded. Harmon wasn't the top. He answered to a consortium, 7 individuals who control healthcare investments worth over $100 billion combined. They're insulated, protected, and until now, completely untouchable. Until now? Harmon's death changed the equation. Someone got sloppy, the moving truck, the cleaned-out safe. That's desperation, not precision. They're worried. And worried people leave traces. She pulled up surveillance footage. This is from Harmon's neighborhood 2 days ago, the truck. We've traced it to a logistics company owned by a shell corporation. Same shell corporation that paid the bomber who hit Hartwell General. Ethan leaned forward. You can connect them. We're building the case, but we need Garrett. He's the only one left alive who knows the full structure, and he's not talking. He won't. They've made it clear what happens to people who talk. Calloway spoke up. Then we change the incentive structure. We offer him full immunity, witness protection, a new identity, everything, in exchange for testimony that brings down the consortium. You think he'll take it? I think he's smart enough to realize he's dead either way. At least this way, he takes them down with him. Reeves added, We're moving on this tonight. FBI's coordinating with federal marshals. We'll approach Garrett at his apartment, make the offer, get him into protective custody before anyone knows he's flipped. And if he refuses? Morrison's expression was ice. Then he's a dead man on borrowed time, and we build the case without him. But Dr. Vale, understand this. Whether Garrett cooperates or not, you're a witness. You'll testify. You'll spend months in depositions. Your life will be scrutinized. Are you prepared for that? I've been preparing since I filed the first complaint. Good. Because this doesn't end with arrests. This ends with systemic change, new regulations, federal oversight, criminal penalties for corporate negligence. The entire healthcare industry is about to be restructured, and you're the face of why it needs to happen. The weight of it settled on Ethan's shoulders. Not just justice for Marsh or the bombing victims, a complete overhaul of the system that had allowed all of it to happen. When do we start? He asked. We already have. Morrison stood. Go back to Fort Meade, lead your team, do the work you were meant to do, let us handle the legal warfare. Ethan stood to leave, then stopped. The message, the one we all got, about the war not being over. Psychological warfare, trying to make us think they're still in control. Morrison's smile was predatory. They're not. They just don't know it yet. The next 72 hours blurred together. Training at Fort Meade, equipment drills, mission briefings. Ethan threw himself into preparation, building the team into something cohesive and functional. The news played constantly in the background. Garrett arrested again, this time without bail, cooperating with federal prosecutors. Arrest warrants issued for 6 members of the Apex Consortium. Assets frozen. Congressional hearings scheduled. The machine was finally moving. On the third day, Julia Rain's article hit. Front page of the Post, picked up by every major outlet within hours. Healthcare corruption exposed. How a multi-billion-dollar conspiracy put profits over patients. Complete with leaked emails, financial records, and testimony from families who'd lost loved ones to negligence. The public response was immediate and furious. Protests outside Meridian hospitals. Class action lawsuits filed by the hundreds. State medical boards launching investigations. The consortium tried to fight back. Press releases, legal motions, counter-accusations, but the evidence was overwhelming. They'd built an empire on silence, and silence had just been shattered. Ethan's phone rang on the morning of deployment. His daughter. Dad, I saw you on TV. They said you're a hero. He smiled, exhaustion and pride mixing together. I'm just a doctor, Bug. The other kids at school are saying their parents are talking about you, about how you stopped bad people. I had help. A lot of help. But you started it. You didn't quit when they fired you. No, I didn't. I'm proud of you. His throat tightened. I'm proud of you too, for being brave when things were scary. Are you still going on the helicopter? Yeah, we're leaving today, helping people after the hurricane. Will you come back? Always, I promise. They talked for another 10 minutes, her voice grounding him in what actually mattered. When she finally said goodbye, he felt ready. Hayes found him in the equipment bay running final checks. Teams loaded, helicopters fueled, were wheels up in 15. She handed him a tablet. This just came through. Garrett's testimony was sealed and delivered to the grand jury. Indictments are coming down today. All 7 members of the consortium. How long until trial? 6 months, maybe less, but Vale, they're already pleading out, cutting deals. This is over. We won. He wanted to feel victorious. Instead, he just felt tired. People are still dead. Marsh, Harmon, the victims of faulty equipment. Winning doesn't bring them back. No, but it means their deaths mattered. It means the system changes. That's the best outcome we get in this line of work. She was right. Justice wasn't resurrection. It was accountability, prevention, making sure the next person didn't suffer the same way. The helicopter lifted off exactly on schedule, rising over Fort Meade, banking south toward the Gulf Coast. Ethan sat with his team, watching the ground fall away, feeling the familiar pull of adrenaline and purpose. His phone buzzed one last time before they left cell range. A text from Torres. Garrett's in witness protection. Consortium members in custody. Meridian filed for bankruptcy. Apex Holdings dissolved. You did it. Another text appeared. From a number he didn't recognize. The war is over. You won. Some of us are glad. A friend. Ethan stared at the message, then deleted it. Whoever had sent the original warning had been right. There had been a war. But unlike what they'd predicted, the outcome hadn't been predetermined. Good people fighting together could still change things, could still win. The coastline appeared below, devastation spreading for miles, flooded towns, collapsed buildings. Thousands of people displaced, injured, desperate. The helicopter descended toward the disaster zone, and Ethan's team shifted into operational mode. This was the work, not press conferences or court cases, not headlines or political theater, just doctors and medics doing what they'd trained to do, saving lives when everything else had failed. They touched down in a staging area converted from a high school football field. FEMA coordinators rushed forward with briefings, casualty counts, resource inventories. The scope of need was overwhelming. Ethan's team didn't hesitate. They set up the mobile surgical unit in 90 minutes, converting cargo containers into operating rooms. Triage tents went up. Supply lines established. Within 2 hours of arrival, they were seeing patients, trauma cases, infections, complications from chronic conditions interrupted by the disaster. Ethan worked through the afternoon and into the night, hands moving through familiar patterns, making decisions that mattered, saving lives that deserved saving. Around him, his team operated with the same intensity, the same refusal to quit. This was why he'd become a doctor, not for recognition or money or career advancement. For moments like this, when skill and compassion could pull someone back from the edge. At some point during the night, between surgeries, he stepped outside for air. The devastation stretched endlessly under emergency lights. But there were also signs of resilience. People helping neighbors, volunteers distributing supplies, communities refusing to break. Colonel Hayes appeared beside him, holding 2 cups of coffee. "Thought you could use this." He took it gratefully. "Thanks. Your team's good, really good. You picked well." "They picked themselves. I just gave them purpose." Hayes smiled. "That's leadership, knowing when to get out of the way and let people do what they're built for." She paused. "The senator called. Wanted me to tell you the indictments came down, all 7. No plea deals accepted. They're going to trial." "Good. He also said to tell you that Congress is drafting new legislation, the Hartwell Act, named after the hospital, mandatory safety standards, federal oversight, criminal penalties for corporate executives who prioritize profit over patient care. It'll pass with bipartisan support." Ethan felt something shift inside him. Not vindication, not triumph, just quiet recognition that the fight had been worth it. "What happens after this?" he asked. "After the trials? After the legislation?" "You keep doing this. Leading teams, saving lives, making the system work the way it was supposed to all along." Hayes finished her coffee. "You've proven something important, Vale. That one person standing up can make a difference, even when the entire system is designed to silence them. I wasn't alone. Reeves, Torres, Julia Raines, Senator Callaway, they all fought too." "True. But you were the catalyst. You refused to quit when it cost you everything. That matters." A medic called from the surgical tent. Another patient coming in, critical condition. Ethan handed his cup back to Hayes and headed inside, scrubbing up, focusing on the work. Scrubbing. The next 72 hours passed in a blur of surgeries, rounds, triage decisions. His team saved 43 lives that would have been lost without immediate intervention. They stabilized another 100 patients for evacuation to functioning hospitals. They worked until exhaustion became a permanent state, then worked through it anyway. On the 4th day, relief teams arrived to take over. Ethan's unit packed up, loaded into the helicopter, and lifted off as the sun rose over a landscape still broken but beginning to heal. The flight back to Fort Meade was quiet, his team sleeping in their seats, exhausted but satisfied. Ethan stayed awake, watching the country pass below, thinking about everything that had happened. He'd been fired for doing the right thing, hunted by a corrupt system, thrust into the middle of a conspiracy that killed people to protect profits. And somehow, through all of it, he'd found his way back to the work that mattered, not in spite of being cast aside, because of it. They landed at Fort Meade as the evening sun painted everything gold. Hayes was waiting on the tarmac with news. Garrett testified today. 8 hours on the stand. Gave them everything. Names, dates, financial transactions, communications. The prosecution says it's the most comprehensive testimony they've ever received in a white-collar case. Will it stick? The defense hasn't even tried to cross-examine yet. They're scrambling. This is going exactly how we hoped. Ethan nodded, too tired to feel much of anything except relief. Go home, Hayes said. See your daughter. Rest. You've earned it. His sister picked him up at the gate, his daughter already asleep in the back seat. The drive home was quiet, familiar streets passing in comfortable silence. At the house, he carried his daughter inside, tucked her into bed, watched her sleep for a moment before heading downstairs. His sister was making tea, the kitchen warm and normal. You look like hell, she said. Feel like it too. Was it worth it? He thought about the question, about Marsh and Harmon and all the people who died because someone decided profit mattered more than lives, about the patients he'd saved in the Gulf Coast, the legislation being drafted, the trials that would hold people accountable. Yeah, he said finally. It was worth it. His phone buzzed one last time. A news alert. Breaking. Jury selection begins Monday in Apex Healthcare corruption trial. 7 defendants face charges including conspiracy, obstruction, and negligent homicide. Star witness Dr. Ethan Vale expected to testify. He set the phone down and drank his tea, feeling the weight of what came next, but also the certainty that he could handle it. 3 weeks later, he stood in a federal courthouse, hand raised, swearing to tell the truth. The courtroom was packed, reporters, victims' families, legal teams on both sides. The defendants sat at the defense table, 7 people who'd built an empire on human suffering, now facing consequences. Ethan testified for 6 hours. He walked the jury through every complaint he'd filed, every safety violation he'd documented, every warning he'd raised that had been ignored. He explained how the system was designed not just to cut costs, but to silence anyone who questioned it. The defense tried to rattle him, painting him as bitter and vindictive. He stayed calm, answered every question with facts, let the evidence speak. When he finally stepped down, the prosecution rested their case. The trial lasted 7 weeks. Garrett's testimony was devastating. The documentary evidence was overwhelming. One by one, the defendants tried to cut deals, but the attorney general refused. The jury deliberated for 18 hours. Guilty. All counts. All defendants. Sentencing came 2 months later. Prison terms ranging from 15 to 35 years. Asset forfeiture totaling billions. And a permanent ban from ever working in healthcare again. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed Ethan. He kept it brief. This verdict doesn't bring back the people we lost, but it sends a message that human lives matter more than profit margins, that systems built on exploitation will be held accountable, and that speaking up, even when it costs you everything, is always worth it. Julia Raines published a follow-up piece that won a Pulitzer. The Hartwell Act passed Congress with 92 votes in favor. Hospitals across the country began implementing new safety protocols. Medical boards established whistleblower protections. The system started to change. Slowly, imperfectly, but undeniably. Ethan went back to work, leading his surgical team on deployment after deployment, disaster zones, conflict areas, anywhere people needed help and the system had collapsed. He saved lives, trained younger surgeons, built something that mattered. On the anniversary of his firing from Hartwell General, he took his daughter to the park. She was 9 now, growing up fast, asking harder questions. Dad, why did you keep fighting when everyone told you to quit? He thought about it, watching her swing higher and higher. Because quitting would have meant they were right, that I was just a problem to be solved. But I wasn't a problem. I was a person trying to help other people, and that's never wrong. Even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. She jumped off the swing, landing perfectly, turning to him with a smile that reminded him why any of it had been worth it. I want to be like you when I grow up. You already are, Bug. You already are. They walked home as the sun set, father and daughter, the world continuing around them. Imperfect, complicated, but better than it had been. Better because people had refused to accept broken systems and fought to change them. Ethan's phone rang. Colonel Hayes. Commander, we've got a situation. Earthquake in Central America, major hospital collapse, hundreds trapped. How fast can your team deploy? He looked at his daughter, saw her nod, understanding without words. Give me 2 hours. You've got one. He smiled. Some things never changed. The need was always urgent, the stakes always high. The work always waiting. But that was fine, because he'd learned something important in the year since everything fell apart. Being cast aside doesn't define you. How you respond does. And Ethan Vale had responded by refusing to quit, refusing to be silenced, refusing to accept that systems built on suffering were unchangeable. He'd lost a job, but he'd found a purpose. He'd been dismissed as a problem, but he'd become a solution. He'd been told he didn't matter, and he'd proven them catastrophically wrong. The helicopter was waiting. His team was ready. People needed help. Ethan kissed his daughter goodbye, promised to come back, and headed out the door. Not as a man who'd been defeated, but as one who'd discovered that the only real failure was accepting injustice without fighting back. The system had tried to break him. Instead, he'd broken the system. And somewhere, in hospitals across the country, patients were safer because one doctor had refused to look away. That was victory. That was justice. That was enough.